Morning everybody, and thank you for joining us this morning to talk through the details of the R&D tax relief scheme. The webinar this morning will be split into two specific aspects. The first will look at the types of benefit a client can receive from R&D tax relief, the areas of activity that are eligible for relief, and the costs that are eligible for relief as well. We will then spend some time looking at why an engineering or manufacturing company will want to work with Jumpstart on preparing and submitting their claim. So first and most important thing is, what is the R&D tax relief scheme? The scheme was introduced in 2000 by the British government to encourage UK companies to spend on innovation and specifically research and development activities. There are two specific schemes. The first of these is the SME scheme, which is available to companies with less than 500 employees, a turnover under 100 million euros, and a balance sheet of less than 86 million euros. For companies claiming under the SME scheme, a company can qualify for up to 26% relief against identified eligible spend. That means for a company in a profit-making situation that spends £100,000 on R&D in 1 year, they can expect to receive up to £26,000 as relief against corporation tax. If an SME is in a loss-making position, the company can choose to surrender its losses in exchange for a cash payment of up to 33.35%. That means that same company spending £100,000 on R&D, if it was in a loss-making position, the company could qualify for up to £33,350 cash payment. That's a significant cash payment for SMEs that may have a short-term funding issue due to the amount they've invested in R&D or product development. The second scheme is the RDEX scheme, which is for larger companies with over 500 employees and a turnover in excess of 100 million euros. The scheme's less attractive and it yields 8.8% net benefit for companies. So again, a company claiming under the RDEX scheme spending £100,000 a year would actually qualify for £8,800 tax relief. If it was in a loss-making position, it would also qualify for £8,800 cash payment. So that's the typical benefits available to companies. Particularly the SME scheme is significant in its benefit back to the companies, and the impetus, the drive, is to encourage companies to invest more in that speculative R&D, which should drive innovation within those companies as well. In terms of what qualifies as R&D from HMRC's perspective, there are three broad criteria that need to be satisfied. The first is the company has to be undertaking projects which seek to achieve an advance in science or technology. That would be an advance on the existing baseline at the time the project starts. And companies have to be very careful in terms of defining their field of science or technology to ensure they can determine that their particular advance is significant in that field. And these are very relative and subjective terms. The second area of criteria for qualifying is that the project itself has to be subject to scientific or technological uncertainty. What that means is, in achieving the advance, the company has to face issues which have no obvious or published existing solution, or where the solution is not easily deducible by a competent professional. The competent professional is the third qualifying criteria. So companies can only claim for R&D tax relief when they've had projects that have been subject to technological or scientific uncertainty, and those projects have been addressed by competent professionals. You'll appreciate that each of these three criteria are particularly subjective and open to a lot of interpretation. There are 500 pages of legislation that HMRC have developed to guide and drive this scheme, and we believe, our experience is that most companies struggle to understand the legislation comprehensively and to employ it or deploy it to show or demonstrate that they've achieved these three criteria. That's really why there's been the development of R&D tax specialists such as ourselves. Yeah. In terms of the eligible costs that companies can claim relief against, the most significant cost for most companies tends to be staffing costs. As we'll all appreciate, research and development is done by people, and people are generally one of the two most significant costs in businesses. So staffing costs qualify. That might be direct R&D staff. It could also be support staff who are supporting the activities of the R&D staff or the technical staff involved in development projects. So we can sometimes claim relief against some indirect costs if we could show that that it was required or necessary to allow the project to progress. The second most significant cost, particularly in terms of engineering and manufacturing companies, tends to be the raw materials element. As we'll all appreciate, engineering and manufacturing companies are involved extensively in prototyping, testing designs, or exploring design potential, and that generally requires an investment in raw materials. The third area, becoming much more significant these days in terms of engineering and manufacturing, would be software. If there is a requirement to acquire particular pieces of software in order to allow an R&D project to develop, a company can claim relief against the license costs of the software, but won't be able to claim relief against training costs on that software. Particularly SMEs will be able to claim relief against a proportion of subcontractor costs and externally provided workers. These are specific to the SME scheme, but are again a valuable source of relief for companies claiming under that scheme. So which industry sectors are receiving most benefit from HMRC through this scheme? In the last year, the HMRC has published figures. HMRC gave back £2.9 billion worth of benefit to UK companies. Roughly 31% of that went to manufacturing, 860 million. We tend to find manufacturing is the most significant benefactor from the scheme, and that's primarily because there is significant investment in product development and product improvement within manufacturing. And traditionally, those have been resource intensive in terms of labour and in terms of raw materials. The second biggest benefactor is professional, scientific and technical, which would include life sciences, pharmaceuticals and contract research organisations. Again, in that particular sector, there is ongoing continuous R&D, and that obviously gives rise to a significant benefit for companies in that sector. The third area would be information communication technology. That would include software, digital media, and at the moment it accounts for 16% of the total benefit given out by HMRC last year, and we're starting to see that figure rise year on year. It's interesting to note though that there are no sectors excluded from claiming under this scheme. It's not about the industry sector you sit in, it's about the nature of the work that companies undertake. So if we can show companies are trying to achieve that advance in their field of science or technology, if we can show they've addressed technical uncertainties and they have competent professionals in the correct fields of science and technology administering that R&D work, we can make a claim. And certainly we've worked across all of the sectors at the bottom of this slide. So wholesale, retail, construction materials, financial services, professional services, and a whole host of others. What I would say is that regardless of the industry sector that your members might sit in, if you believe they could have R&D relief potential, feel free to pass on the details to us. We'll have that initial conversation and we can probably best assess where the opportunities are. We'd rather talk to a company and rule them out early on than have a company miss the opportunity for realising some benefit through the scheme. So a couple of thumbnails of companies we've worked with in achieving benefit. These are very superficial, but it gives you an idea of the range of companies in terms of manufacturing that we've worked with. The first one is actually an agricultural engineering company which designs and manufactures crop spraying equipment, and they've had a fairly extensive ongoing R&D program for the last 5 years. We undertook their first 3 years claims, and over the first 3 years we managed to achieve a £460,000 benefit for them. We're still continuing to work on that company's claims, and they receive benefit on a regular basis because of the amount of investment they make in product development. The second company was involved in manufacturing road rail track cleaning machinery, and they had a number of very small projects involved. They had a significant spend on R&D on a year-by-year basis, but unfortunately for the company, a lot of the projects they're involved in weren't deemed to have the right level of technical uncertainty. So we managed to get them £44,500 benefit over 3 years. And the third company was a precision component manufacturer who had a significantly high level of waste, particularly on gold-plated components. And obviously, gold plating is an expensive material, and if they could reduce the percentage of waste in the manufacturing line, it would lead to significant cost savings for the company. So they had 3 projects involved. One was looking at alternative plating materials to replace the gold plate. Another one was redesign the components to change the shape of the component to eliminate damage potential. And the third was re-engineering the robotic handling equipment in the manufacturing line, again to reduce the potential damage from robotic handling during manufacture. It was a resource-intensive project, and they had a significantly high proportion of the eligible costs came from raw materials, obviously, and it was a short and intense project because the company had a significant problem they needed to resolve quickly, and we managed to realise £255,000 benefit over a 1 year period. Again, it's worthwhile saying that we work across every angle and aspect of manufacturing, from packaging materials to electronic components to agricultural equipment, as I've said earlier. There isn't an aspect within engineering and manufacturing which we haven't dealt with over our history. So that's a bit about the scheme, what kind of benefits companies can have, and where they can, where the benefit comes from, what qualifies them for benefit. And I just want to take a short time to talk about why companies would want to work specifically with Jumpstart. At Jumpstart, we believe we have 2 key differentiators from our providers. The first is that specialist technical consultation. Jumpstart, from its very inception, has believed that R&D tax relief is a technology or scientific driven program. If you look at the criteria we mentioned earlier, it was all about the level of technical risk or challenge in the work, the individuals taking on that work. There's very little in the legislation about the accounting practices. That makes it a technical-driven claim process, not an accounting-driven one. The other side to our differentiator is the client services and support we provide to clients. So I'll just take a bit of time and explain why those add value for manufacturers and particularly for EEF members. The technical consultation process, it's important to remember that Jumpstart has the largest technical team in the UK for R&D tax provision. We have 15 analysts at the moment. All of those analysts are qualified in their own field of science. Many of them have PhDs in their particular field of science or technology. Most of them will have industrial R&D experience, and they are all trained in the 500 pages of legislation and guidance that governs the R&D tax relief scheme. So when we work with a company, regardless of the sector they're involved in, we will try in the early stages to define the particular field of science or technology that the bulk of their focus or resource was invested in during the claim period. We will then align one of our analysts to the company or to those particular activities. So from the very start, our analyst has industry knowledge. They have an understanding of the company's challenges, what they were trying to achieve through the R&D project. Our analyst can put context around the project, and very often they have a depth of understanding that allows them to have a discussion with the client around the known alternatives or the options the company might have considered in its path to achieving the technical advance. So that understanding of the technology involved or the technical aspects involved in the R&D process makes it very easy for an analyst to have an in-depth, knowledgeable conversation with the technical staff in any company, and for us to be able to drill down and identify the qualifying R&D that often the company doesn't even realise it's been involved in. We also have significant experience in interpreting HMRC legislation and applying that to individual companies and cases. So part of our analyst's job is to thoroughly understand the detail of the R&D activities a company is involved in, and then to be able to map that to the qualifying criteria and the legislation within HMRC's scheme, and to maximise the areas of eligible activity and spend. It's also fair to say that over the last 9 years, we have successfully completed and submitted over 3,000 R&D tax claims to HMRC. So we have the combined experience of writing 3,000 successful claims, 3,000 successful technical reports, and there's a knack to writing technical reports for HMRC. So our team will know what HMRC want to see in that report, which headings they want to see addressed, which questions they want answered, and the language that the report needs to be written in. It's also worthwhile noting that all of our analysts are employed exclusively by Jumpstart. We don't use subcontractors, we don't use associates. That's necessary because we take a collaborative approach to writing reports during the claim preparation process. The second aspect is the client services and support. From the minute that we sign a contract with a client, Jumpstart's client services team will take control of managing the whole process. We will start from the submission deadline. There will be a date by which we have to put that relief claim into HMRC, and we will work from there, and we will set dates for first technical meeting, first draft of technical report, approval of technical report by the client, release of costing sheets to client, completion of costing sheets, dates for review of all the documentation, collation of documentation, all leading up to that final submission date. Our staff will be responsible for coordinating diaries, setting meetings, and making sure that both our own staff and the client staff undertake the actions required by the times required. Why do we do that? We believe that your members' key role, key responsibility is to successfully manage their businesses. It's not to manage the submission of a tax relief claim to HMRC. Our job is to prepare and submit successful claims to HMRC. So by taking on that responsibility, we free up your members to get on with their day job. We also believe by taking on responsibility for the expedition of the claim preparation, that it's much easier for us to maintain momentum and make sure that things don't fall down and we don't miss that submission deadline. So, by combining that technical consultation and the client services support, we believe that we minimise the time for your members. Your members, the management team of your members, their time is minimised in the process. We had one EEF member who recently told us, a technical director, he believed he spent the majority of his time over a 6-week period every year on coordinating the collation of all the information that his R&D tax provider required. After looking at the claim, we were able to tell him that we could minimise his time involvement to 2 days, and that was for a claim over 5 manufacturing sites. So we take on all of the work, we free up members of the management team to get on with what they want to do. We minimise the risk for the client. As I said before, we have the technical knowledge within our analysts, but they also have the legislative knowledge of the system. Bringing those together, we minimise the opportunity or the risk of non-compliance in a claim. We eliminate the opportunity of an overclaim, and we ensure that all clients' reports are compliant and robust, because we give all of our clients the assurance that if there is ever an inquiry on a claim which we have prepared and submitted, Jumpstart will defend that claim at no extra cost to the client. So there's another risk minimisation strategy in there. We know that a number of the other providers in the marketplace in the UK will charge additional fees if a client ever needs to defend a claim after it's been submitted. We minimise the complexity for clients. We understand the legislation, we understand what HMRC want to see in a technical report and what they want to see in terms of cost evidence, so the client doesn't have to understand that. We have a number of touch points through the preparation process, and as long as we have access to the right individuals in the company at that time, then we take on the complexity to free up the management team. And the final aspect is that combining that technical consultation and the client services support maximises the value for the client. We have a track record in identifying and documenting more eligible spend than our competitors. Over the last 5 years, we have looked at 50 claims prepared and submitted by other providers. In 27 of those cases, we were able to identify additional eligible spend, and we increased the identified eligible spend over those 27 claims from 6.3 million up to 12.28 million. That's a significant additional benefit for any SME. And here are some examples of that value technical consultation. The one up in the top left-hand corner, a large pump manufacturer, their Big Four accountant had been working on a claim for the company, managed to achieve £90,000 worth of benefit for the client. The senior management team of the company believed there was much higher levels of benefit available to them because they knew how much they were spending each year on innovation or R&D projects. So they asked us to undertake a review over a an 18-month period, we had 6 technical analysts look at the review. We had 6 analysts because it was involving a number of different disciplines. So there was software in there was mechanical engineering, there was material sciences, and a number of other technical specialisms. That's why we had such a large team work on it. We were able to realise an additional £734,000 benefit for that particular company. That's a welcome addition to any company's coffers in the current climate. The top right-hand corner, a small analytical instruments manufacturer making a claim each year through their accountant. The accountant was claiming back £20,000 benefit for the client. In conversation with another company in a similar field, the client identified there may be more benefit within their business than the accountant was identifying. They approached us, asked us to have a look at the claim, and we were able to identify an additional £90,000 benefit over 2 years for the client. Bottom left-hand corner, an electronic engineering company working across a number of sectors were making self-claims and had achieved a £435,000 claim over a 2-year period. They were advised to speak to Jumpstart by one of the professional advisors because the professional advisor had experienced the Jumpstart and believed they were missing some eligible spend in the business. We reviewed those 2 years' claims, and over the 2 years we were able to identify an additional £1.47 million of eligible expenditure. That £1.47 million of eligible spend translated into about £450,000 worth of additional benefit for the client. And then finally, a small food and drink manufacturing company working through a boutique R&D tax provider. The tax provider was able to identify £63,000 worth of eligible spend. There were some issues in there around grants, and the food and drink company asked us for a second opinion. And when we looked at the claim, there were a number of issues or aspects of R&D activity the boutique provider had overlooked, and we were able to identify an additional £140,000 worth of eligible spend for that food company. We're often asked by advisors and referrers how they approach companies who are already claiming. And there are a number of aspects or questions that you really want to raise with your client or your member. Even if it's just to help the member gain assurance that the particular provider they're working with is doing justice to their claim and to the company. First start point for us would be, can your advisor have that technical discussion around your R&D projects? So is the individual who's dealing with the preparation of your claim technically conversant with your R&D activity? As I explained previously, when Jumpstart works with a company, we match our analysts' knowledge and experience to the company's core field of science or technology, and our analysts will have a face-to-face meeting or a technical meeting that allows them to explore the detail of the projects involved. We often find other providers, particularly if they're taking an accounting approach to this, will have accounting-based staff with accounting experience who are much less experienced or knowledgeable in the technical aspects of a claim, and may not be able to use that technical discussion or meeting to actually drill down and find all of the R&D eligible activity. Does your provider coordinate all of the activities involved in preparing and submitting the claim? As I've explained, our customer services team take all of that responsibility on, and we believe that takes a significant amount of pressure off the management team and our clients. That allows them to focus on their day job and should reduce the minimum amount of disruption to day-to-day operations in our clients. It also means that we maintain that momentum and we don't miss submission deadlines. Does your provider sign and submit the claim on your behalf? This is very important because in the early stages of working with a client, when we sign contracts, we ask the client to sign a mandate which establishes Jumpstart as their agent purely for R&D tax relief. That allows us to work on their behalf and to talk on their behalf with HMRC. When we prepare a claim, we sign the claim on the client's behalf as their agent. So that claim or any errors within that claim then becomes our responsibility. If there are any questions or inquiries around the claim, HMRC will come to us in the first instance and ask for clarification. This again minimises the intrusion on the company. It minimises the amount of time they'll be involved in the process in answering questions or queries, and we just find it's a much smoother process. We will also offer all of our clients free defence inquiry defence if it ever arises, and I think that gives the client that additional assurance that we have responsibility for this, not for them. If it ever arises, and it hasn't to date, but if any of our clients are ever asked to repay a proportion of the benefit that's been paid to them by HMRC on a claim which Jumpstart has prepared and submitted, then Jumpstart undertakes to repay that overpayment on the client's behalf. That's how much confidence we have in the rigour of our preparation process and in the robustness of our claims. Does your provider submit a detailed technical report to HMRC? The legislation is clear that every claim for tax relief should have a technical report which clearly addresses the areas of advancing technology seeking to be achieved, the technical uncertainties being addressed, and how those were resolved. We submit a technical report on every occasion, but again, we know there are claims going into HMRC at the moment which do not have those claims, those reports submitting or supporting their claims. Finally, can your provider fully answer any technical questions from HMRC on your claim? There are a number of providers in the market who will ask the client to sign the claim and to sign off on the technical report. If there is an inquiry or a question that comes out of that claim, then very often the provider will put that back to the client company and say, you've signed the report, you've signed the claim, it's your responsibility. That often comes from the provider's lack of technical knowledge, either on the science or technology behind the R&D, or it could be on the technical aspects of HMRC's own legislation. Jumpstart brings both of them together in its analyst team, and that's why we're confident to take on all of the questions and inquiries that come from HMRC's assessors. A bit about Jumpstart and what we've achieved. We are the largest technical team in the UK. We have 15 analysts working across the UK. All of them are educated in their own particular field of science or technology. Most of them have industrial R&D experience, and they are all trained up to a high level of understanding of HMRC legislation relating to this particular scheme. Over the last 9 years, we have realised £96 million worth of benefit for clients. That has entailed identifying, documenting and reporting on £482 million worth of R&D activity in our clients. We are certified to ISO 9001. That means we have a rigorous process in place. It's robust, and those rigours deliver robust, defensible claims that our clients can be confident in, and we put our weight behind and our confidence behind. That's why we offer free defence to clients. Finally, we believe we're the only provider that has its own internal academy that maintains its analysts' knowledge and understanding of HMRC legislation. So on a monthly basis, all of our analysts and our business development staff have to refresh their knowledge of various aspects of the scheme. So that's a bit about who we are and why companies can have confidence in us. The robustness of our process itself, we've got a 7-step process to that successful claim, and it's worth running through this because again, it should give your members a bit of confidence. In the initial stages, we will have a technical meeting that may be face-to-face, it may be over the phone, depending on the client's needs and circumstances. We'll discuss the technology and the costs for the client. We will discuss them in detail. Based on that technical meeting, we will write a technical report. We write the report because we believe we understand better than the client does what HMRC wants to see. And by writing that report, we make it much more objective and can ensure that it answers all the questions HMRC are looking for and minimise the opportunity for additional questions and inquiries. Those are the things that slow the approval process up at HMRC then. Once we've written that technical report, we actually give it back to the client to review. We think that's important because the client needs to know what we're saying about the work they've undertaken. It is their work, it's their R&D tax claim, and it's only fair that they understand how we're representing their work to external parties such as HMRC. Once the client signed off on the technical report and told us that they're happy with the content, we'll then provide a populated cost capture sheet. This captures all of the cost evidence HMRC need on the company's spend on R&D projects. We will then take both of those documents and we will review them internally. We have a peer review process within Jumpstart, so other analysts will look at each other's work and we'll make sure that that work is complete, that there are no gaps in the information, that there are no weaknesses in the arguments we present to HMRC. We then ask the client for final claim approval just to make sure they're happy with the report we've produced and also the level of benefit. Well, it's less the benefit, it's more about the levels of expenditure we're claiming the company has undertaken, and from that, the resulting benefit we expect the client to get. We will then take those figures and we'll send a copy to your accountant so the accountant knows what we're submitting to HMRC and what the likely value of benefit is to be. And we will also submit documents directly to HMRC. As I explained earlier, we act as the agent, so it's our claim, we sign it off, we submit it. And then once the claim is approved and settled by HMRC, if there are any inquiries, any questions, we will defend them at no extra charge to the client. It's our responsibility, it's our time, our effort in defending our claim. Some questions you might want to ask your members, questions that we regularly ask manufacturing engineering companies because we know it's the early indicator of potential eligibility. First one is, do you make lots of prototypes? Most manufacturing companies will be involved in prototyping at various stages. It's a tried and tested mechanism for verifying design, and almost every manufacturing company we've been involved in will have prototyping of one form or another. Our company is regularly involved in improving designs. That might be about simplifying components in a design to reduce risk or to improve performance. It might be about reducing the parts. It might be about using new materials in the parts. All of these activities are indicators to us that there will be technical challenges in the process, or there will be uncertainties that the client hasn't addressed before or haven't been addressed by other companies in a similar field. Is the company regularly involved in improvements to manufacturing processes or improvements to its manufacturing plant? Again, particularly if companies are looking at changes to manufacturing processes that will drive reduction in raw materials, reduction in waste. It might be about elimination of waste itself. It might be about reducing energy consumption. All of these types of projects will often throw up technical challenges which engineers haven't addressed in their particular situation or circumstances in the past, and those may lead to eligible relief claims. And finally, particularly in the last couple of years, we are finding a lot of manufacturing engineering companies experimenting with new materials because they have enhanced properties. they've got improved tensile strengths, or they provide increased resistance to corrosion in hostile environments, and are longer wearing, more durable. In these situations, when companies are experimenting with new materials, those new materials will often throw up technical challenges that the engineers have to work around in their manufacturing process. Finally, process improvement projects. If any of your clients have projects focused on waste treatment, waste minimisation or waste elimination, energy reduction, or projects looking at raw material use, so it may be reducing raw material consumption or raw material costs, or using new raw materials in the process, these projects will often flag up the same types of technical risks, the engineering challenges that we get from product development projects. So in all of these instances, if you've got clients who are obviously involved in these types of projects, we would really like to hear from them so we can have that initial discussion and identify more clearly if they have eligibility for tax relief. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for listening. If you're listening to the webcast, if you have any questions, feel free to email us at eef@jumpstartuk.co.uk, and we'll deal with your questions and inquiries as and when. If you want to speak to somebody on the phone, my contact details are on the first slide. Feel free to give me a call, and if I can't help you, I will certainly get one of my colleagues in the company with the right expertise to answer your questions. Thanks very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this and found it informative.